it's our presupposition on the show that like, okay, it happens in the church first and then it comes out in culture. That's what I'm getting at here.
He got that, Gabe.
In the same way, I was giving him a way out. In the same way, you know, where do you see the secularist mindset happening in the church first before culture?
I think if I could fix one thing in the contemporary American church, it would be that either for fiduciary reasons or a misguided soteriology or theology, we have taken Christ's two preeminent commands, which you guys all know, like are summaries of the 2 tablets of the 10 commandments. I got asked on Twitter yesterday on the flight down here, I don't understand, what does love your neighbor as you love yourself mean? And I quoted back to him the second tablet of the 10 commandments, all right? That's how we deal with one another horizontally. And the first tablet is how we deal with God, him and us individually. What's happened in the modern American church, and we did this either for fiduciary reasons, because it's good for business, or we did it out of a misguided soteriology or theology, is when Jesus said, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and the second is just like it, to love your neighbors, to love yourself. We've inverted those. And the amount of emails that I get every day, I just read one on my show yesterday, well, my pastor says we can't talk about this stuff because it'll drive people away from Christ if we do. And that is a practical outcome of that skewed theology, where we are now going to offend God so that we do not risk offending people. And hey, I want to make sure we all understand the second greatest commandment means it's like really important, okay? It's really important that we love our neighbor as we love ourselves, that we do not treat them as an algorithm, as a formula, as a philosophical code to crack, all right? But that they're people, and human nature is not a voter guide, it's a Venn diagram. Great people do terrible things, terrible people do great things, people do great things for the wrong reasons and terrible things for the right ones. This is the complexity of human nature in a fallen world, right? And that's why that relationship is key with our Lord and then with one another. But at the same token, we cannot worship people. We have to worship God. And I can tell you, as someone who gets paid to communicate to a wide audience every day, and then I help and get paid to help other people that run for office and do other shows like mine on how they can communicate as well. If you can come up with a completely non-threatening, non-offensive way to say, you're a sinner, you want hell, you desire it, you're going to choose it unless God intervenes, all right? All right, and that is where you will go for all eternity unless you believe this one singular truth. If you know of a non-threatening, non-offensive, 100% winsome way to communicate that, by all means, share it with me. I'll get paid even more than I already do for doing this job, all right? It's not possible. Offense is built in. And so what we have to figure out is the churches that do this, do they do this because they have taken Arminianism to the point of honoring Pelagius? And I'm glad I'm in a room where I can mention those names. You guys actually know who I'm talking about, all right? Or because because if so, that's one debate with that group. That's a sincere theological conviction that is skewed and in error that you would address thusly. Or is it because it pays to be a coward? It allows me to build a massive megapolis in the suburbs, my own private Idaho, Protestant monasticism, with churches that look like Pottery Barn outlets, all right? And everybody is a little above average and never upset, okay? It's the Lake Woebegone denomination, all right? And that is the sweater-vested brigade and the skinny pants, right? I was listening to a...
He's talking about you, cookies.
I was listening to a sports podcast while lifting yesterday, and I kid you not, one of the hosts attacked the other host for dressing like a youth pastor on a sports podcast.
Oh.
Our own stereotypes and our own tropes from the church growth consultants who all ought to be Viking funeraled, all right? This has become such a crossover trope that even the secular sports world is like, yeah, we know what that fake uniform
That's
is.
gay.
That's gay. That's fake and gay. We even know that, all right? And so I think that we've got to put God back in the place of primacy where he belongs, and we have to hold our own accountable to, are you just taking Arminianism to the point that he would be like, dude, you need to seriously stop and maybe read Calvin more? Or Or are you just a commercialized fraud, all right, that is peddling a pseudo life coach religion with Bible verses and creating false converts? And in that case, then the sheep need to confront the wolves.
Gabe, put another quarter in.
Every time we get them. Every time we get them.
A master called together a few young men of this generation and spoke to them, saying, I gave your great-grandfathers a time of despair and poverty and global war. They were strong and victorious and built an empire greater than any other. But they were terrible fathers and raised entitled sons and daughters of rot who inherited everything through no courage of their own. To those rotten sons, your own grandfathers, I gave abundance and wealth and stability. But they pissed it all away on debauchery and sexual revolution, establishing many idols and slaughtering tens of millions of children in sacrifice to their appetites. One generation fought against the perpetrators of a great Holocaust. The next dishonored that victory with an even greater Holocaust of their own children. The children who did survive, your fathers, carried on the sexual descent of their parents into new madness and new disease, piercing and inking their skin like death-worshipping pagans as they did, establishing special days of pride to celebrate the debauch, slaughtering more children and castrating and poisoning others, claiming to be creators when they were destroyers, mutilating the young and calling it acceptance. All these generations I have judged, and am judging. Their madness now is only a taste of my wrath. The young men were afraid and asked the master why he had called them and why he was telling them these things. Because it is now your turn. I am giving all of this chaos to you, he said. Your inheritance is a world of crumbling false gods crowded with blind and mad worshippers. I am entrusting you with a world of empires built on cracked and heaving foundations. The time of your inheritance is near. You have only a little while to prepare yourselves. Seize this moment of chaos and build me a world of sanity and righteousness. When I return, I will judge what you have built for me. With so much rubble to work with, I expect great things. The master turned to leave, but the young men begged him to wait. How can we do this, they asked. There are hundreds of millions of unbelievers in our nation alone and only a few of us. Their master answered, saying, I am not a hard master. You will have the truth and wisdom if you desire it. And you may each choose one woman to help you. That should be enough. Go now and build New St. Andrews College. Carpe Chaos.
Make sure the music's going already. Hey, y'all, welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Good to be with you. Pastor Toby, Waterboy Knox is on the road, and in his place, another Minnesotian, actually. Is that the right way, Minnesotian? No. It's not. Another Minnesotian, Dr. Joe Rigney. Dr. Joe, Pastor Joe, King and Pharaoh of Greyfriars. You know?
And Pharaoh?
Yeah, why not?
Pharaoh.
Why not? He's just them all.
Let my people go.
More bricks, less straw.
That'll be the next Greyfriar ad campaign.
More bricks, less straw.
More bricks, less straw.
That's funny.
Is your website user-friendly, fast, and cohesive? Does your brand clearly communicate who you are and what you have to offer? Whether you're just getting your business started or you've been around the block, Mad Bear Creative can help with all your design needs, from brand identity and web design to SEO. And what's SEO?
SEO, search engine optimization.
Thank you. All right, thank you. And marketing materials. As a husband-wife team, Julio and Rosalind are excited to partner with other small but mighty business owners to capture attention, drive engagement, and unlock growth for your business. Visit madbear.io to sign up for a free consultation and discover how Mad Bear can help you build your legacy. That's madbear.io. Now, I'm actually gonna skip over your bio because I want to read something else. Actually, I'm gonna read this other one. I'm gonna read another ad, and then I've got 2 ads.
Oh,
we're just gonna do a bunch of ads.
Yeah, this is the whole show is on empathy towards ads.
No, it's not. Are you a Christian struggling to find companies that align with your values and beliefs? Squirrely Joe's has you covered for all your coffee needs. Actually, I shook Squirrely Joe's hand over the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
In Louisiana. He was
Okay.
in Louisiana.
Nice.
Squirrely Joe himself, Mr. Squirrely Joe. All of their coffee is hand-selected and roasted fresh every day by a family of fellow believers. Try them out and you'll savor exceptional coffee while knowing that your investment supports a company committed to following God's teachings and upholding truth and righteousness, ensuring your hard-earned money contributes to the growth of God's kingdom. Stop giving your hard-earned dollars to pagans who support evil. We have a fantastic offer for our particular audience. Your first bag of coffee is free. All you have to do is cover the shipping. So head over to squirrelyjoes.com/crosspolitic. That's squirrelyjoes.com/crosspolitic to claim your free bag of coffee today. And one more.
One more.
One
okay.
more.
You just want to get it all the way because we want to focus on Joe and Psalms.
I can never remember to read ads after we get going. Okay. So this is for our friends at Redeemer Community Church in Colorado. The cosmos belongs to our King, and the commission given to his church is to go into all the earth, heralding the good news that with his blood he has purchased every last square inch. And as we know, the task is not to proclaim the lordship of Jesus Christ merely over hearts, not over souls merely, not even over just private dwellings alone, but to see the good reign of King Jesus over every family, city, and nation under heaven. And at the heart of every city is the church, gathering Lord's Day after Lord's Day, proclaiming the mighty deeds of our God, worshiping the Lord in the beauty of holiness, and pouring out from the throne room to see the city of man transformed by the power of the gospel into the city of God. This is the task and glorious mission of the church in every city, state, and nation, including Denver, Colorado. Man, Denver needs it big time.
Big time.
To that end, one of our CREC churches in Denver is laboring with loud shouts of joy. Redeemer Community Church is a growing church full of fruitful families, hard at work, and seeing the kingdom of God come on earth as it is in heaven in the battleground of South Denver. And now, Redeemer has been given the opportunity to purchase and restore a beautiful church building that has been occupied by a denomination that has gone the way of the world, following the folly of the secular and sexually confused. Redeemer has the opportunity to take ground for the kingdom, quite literally, Jacob plundering the tents of Esau. I like what you did there. Redeemer is planning to take possession of the property later this spring and see the Lord breathe new life into a valley of whitewashed tombs, turning that which has been bitter into a sweet cathedral of glorious praise for generations to come. And they're asking for your help. The saints in Colorado are raising money in order to complete the purchase of this facility, and they are humbly and joyfully asking for your help and investment to make this happen. Now is the time to build and cultivate tangible ground for the kingdom in Colorado, and a church property in the heart of Centennial, Colorado is an exciting and timely opportunity. So go to redeemerdenver.org/building, redeemerdenver.org/building to learn more and see pictures and videos of the property.
Nice.
Steward your money in order to see the enemy suffer another loss as Christ builds his church in South Denver, Colorado. Once again, that's redeemerdenver.org/building, and be praying for their success.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Okay.
There
Now,
we go. Can I talk now?
No.
Oh, you got one more?
Now
Oh, now we got to.
I'm going to introduce our special
Doctor,
guest.
Pastor,
Yeah,
King, Pharaoh.
I
Yeah,
don't know
okay.
why. Pharaoh is not in the bio at all. I checked earlier. That's a lot I just read. My goodness. Sorry. Squirrely Joe.
It was a mouthful.
Where was I at? There.
Mhm.
Oh, here we go. Something about Narnia. Joe Rigney is
Yes,
a
mate.
theologian, author, and educator, currently serving as fellow of theology at New St. Andrews College in Moscow, Idaho. Prolific writer. Rigney has authored seven books. Seven? That's still true? More now?
Maybe more.
Maybe more now. Including Live Like an Art. If you don't keep your Wikipedia up to date, cross
It's
politics
not-
as an
No
outdated
idea.
bio.
Well, actually, I blame Jake because I called Jake and texted Jake, and he said, "Hey, can I talk to you tomorrow?" And he never got back to me, so
So
I don't have
just
anything
guess.
that I
No
need.
bug.
I don't even have books to show.
yeah, Live
I
Like a
tried, Joe.
Narnian and Courage, How the Gospel Creates Christian Fortitude. Okay, this is woefully out of date. Leadership and Emotional Sabotage. Is that the name of the book? Is the one
And
that
then what's the next one?
has been rocking the world.
The new one coming out next month from Canon is The Sin of Empathy, Compassion, and Its Counterfeit.
That sounds like the same book.
It is think of it as a prequel.
Okay.
So it's like I gave the solution, and then now I'm going to go deeper in the problem.
Okay.
Very
Cool.
Because like the empathy stuff was like it was a little bit of
Mhm.
Yeah.
sabotage. Like there was a section on it, but that was more like sober-minded leadership courage.
Yours is more like, yeah, that's
Now,
the
and
first
now
one.
I'm like, okay, we're about to like dissect this baby.
Yeah.
Right. Why? And I think it's needed because even when you know, like, okay, I think emotional sabotage is happening, it's like way worse
Correct.
than you then it's like you're like, wait, this is not good. This is not good. But and again, that's like a really, really helpful introduction. But it's like, no, this like goes down deep.
Yeah.
Why does it go down so deep?
Because feelings are powerful. Passions, like same reason the Bible's always like, watch out for your passions.
Right.
Don't follow your passions.
Right. Don't follow your heart.
Don't follow your heart. Your passions will lead you astray.
Yeah.
And so all empathy is when a bunch of people's passions get hooked up to each other.
Right.
And it's
right. And that's why it's
that's
so
super powerful,
potent
yes,
and dangerous,
correct,
and is currently destroying our nation.
Wrecking everything. Yeah, it's interesting. Because I did the empathy stuff before I did sabotage.
Right.
Like, in terms of like, I've been writing on this since 2017, 2018 was when I think that's when I did Sin of Empathy with Doug, my man Rampant. Season 1, episode 1. I was the guinea pig. It was awesome. And then it like people watched it. It got kind of blew up in various ways, all that kind of stuff. And so I worked on it for like 3 or 4 years, where it's like every year or so that would just kind of like empathy wars again.
Right.
Yeah.
There's like this big empathy war thing happening, largely among evangelicals. And kind of through that, I developed some of the thoughts on that eventually became sabotage, because it was like, how do we resist this?
Yeah.
And so that all went into that book. But I had all of this material from sermons and articles and things like that. And I was like, I need to package all this, because right now, if anybody's like, what's this about? I have to send them like 6 different links, you know,
right.
like, go read this article.
That
over
article,
here,
this one.
and it was like, this isn't helpful. We just need to package it.
Yeah.
And so we did sabotage first, but I had the other one kind of like the rough draft. And then we just kind of cleaned it up. And then over the last year, there's a whole other element of it that just kind of like pennies dropped, actually through Meg Basham's stuff.
Yeah, right.
And talking with Meg.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole chapter.
And her shepherding the church.
Shepherds for Sale.
Yeah, Shepherds for Sale.
Basically, yeah, I did a whole, after I think I read a pre-pub that, I can't remember. At some point, interacting with her, like some things dropped about like there's empathy and then there's credibility. Both of those were the steering wheels, and like how that tag team of empathy and respectability, empathy and credibility,
is it as it relates particularly to Big Eva?
And just how did wokeness get so far into the church? Like, what was the steering wheel? Because I had seen like empathy is the thing that's running under all things woke,
right?
But it was like, but it wasn't. But if you said that and you're like, it's all about, you care about what the liberals think. There's a whole bunch of Christians, like conservative Christians who are like real conservatives doctrinally, who would go, no, we don't.
Right.
And would mean it. And you're like, you're right. You actually don't. You're not really worried about what the world thinks directly.
Right.
What you're worried about is what other respectable Christians think.
Right.
And you're all sort of pointed at some level, like you're under the progressive gaze.
Yeah.
So that was this phrase. I don't remember when that came to me. I've written a couple articles on that now, like op-eds, things like that, of this concept that it's Toni Morrison. It's like this Black author, like fiction author, who I heard it during the midst of all the woke stuff. People talk about living under the white gaze.
Okay.
It's like Black people living under the white gaze. It's like, and they describe it as like this white dude on the shoulder, like evaluating everything you do.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's trying to write novels, and kind of feels like she has to like explain things that would be sort of normal for her community.
Right.
Like, she's like, Black people know what this is.
Right.
But she's got this little white man on her shoulder who doesn't know, and is like, well, to explain that, you know?
Right.
And so she's like, you have to like flick that guy off so that you can write authentically from the Black experience.
Okay.
So that was like the whole concept. And then it got expanded in wokeness in terms of like, Black people always live under the white gaze. Minorities are always living under the white gaze, majority culture, that kind of thing.
Right.
I just thought like when I heard that concept, it was like, oh, that's actually what's happening, is that like a whole bunch of Christians, they're just living under the progressive gaze.
Right.
There's a little progressive on their shoulder.
Right.
Censoriously evaluating everything they do and say.
Right. And even if they're not progressive,
correct,
or technically, and though they disagree with that guy,
yep,
they still feel like they have to explain themselves.
Exactly. Rhetorically,
and kind of justify themselves.
Rhetorically orient to him,
yeah,
and his concerns. So his sensitivities, his antipathies, the things he loves, things he hates, you have to account for those because there's a little progressive on your shoulder.
Wow.
And so, and it's like, how did he get there? And it was like empathy. So that there are certain groups that were worthy objects of empathy according to progressives. And then there were certain ways of
illegal immigrants,
immigrants, minorities, women, gays, the whole, that whatever the all the intersection, not the white dudes, but all the intersexual hierarchy stuff,
right?
Object of empathy. But then there's advocates who are like advocating on their behalf,
right?
Activists, you know, whatever communities rise up to kind of speak on their behalf. And then there's respectable people who take that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that group actually that a lot of evangelicals care. Like it was
Yeah.
what, so it's like, it's not just that you have a Jamar Tisby on your shoulder,
Right.
right? Or a Rachel Den Hollander, like that's there,
Right.
but it's also that you have like a little Russell Moore on your shoulder.
Yeah.
And he's not any of those categories, but he's a respectable Christian.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so it's like you want
Ray Ortland.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was that dynamic. So basically, that's the chapter that got added, was like walking through like, how did this actually work? And so Megan's book does the kind of journalism thing.
Yep.
She's got receipts. She's doing
Yeah.
all of the
Right.
like where'd the money come from and how'd it work.
Yeah.
And then I kind of zoom back out and say, here's the common dynamic.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the plays that got run. And I think a lot of people will read that chapter in Sin of Empathy and go like, oh yeah, that's and so I think it'll have a similar what Sabotage has done. I've got a lot of people who say to me like, so are you on our text threads? Like, have you been like listening to our elder meetings? And I'm like, yes, me and the feds. But I think it'll be one of those kind of moments. So like that's in there. And then there's a bunch of other stuff like feminism.
Very good.
So how much of this? I know you want to talk about RFK. We're going to talk
Well,
about
there's a couple things that are going to lead into all this.
Okay. All right. Good. But how much are you tracking with how much empathy has actually been is sort of like mainstream?
Yeah.
And there's actually kind of a mainstream, like outside the Christian bubble or the Reformed bubble. There's a conversation going on out there too. How much does your book interact with that, or how much of that have you even just been tracking?
Yeah. So like, Friedman talks about empathy. So I got into it that way.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, there was this book called Against Empathy.
Yeah.
By,
Is that the Bloom?
Yeah. By Bloom. He's not a Christian.
Yeah.
But and that was one of the things that kickstarted it too. I think I read a review of it and it was like, oh, he's like, when people think of empathy, sometimes they think of hugs. When I think of empathy, I think of war. And I was like, okay,
oh, interesting.
Because he's like, you know what the problem in the Middle East is? Too much empathy.
Interesting.
Because it's the Muslims have all the empathy for the Palestinians, and then other people have empathy for the Jews, and so it's empathy overload. Because empathy often goes hand in hand with hatred.
They're defensive for these
Correct.
people. They're so defensive,
Right.
and then they're willing to go to war over
Yes,
it.
exactly. So like, there's this whole idea. So this was kind of that book. So there is this wider conversation, and then one of the big trigger points for me was there was this video that got circulated a lot among Christians, in like leadership training.
Okay.
From a lady named Brene Brown.
Okay.
So she's like this think like what's the group that used to do the TED Talks?
Okay.
She's like a
TED Talk
type lady
Okay.
who goes and gives. She's written some books. I've not read any of her books, but I've seen this one little clip.
Okay.
Go find it, and it's on empathy versus sympathy, and it's basically she trashes sympathy because sympathy is like, I don't really care about you, and you're down in the pit. And I'm just gonna be like, you want a sandwich down there? You know, like it's very like standoffish, ham-fisted, and so she's like, sympathy breeds disconnection. It's not a loving response, all this stuff. So she trashes sympathy, but like empathy is this good thing, because empathy
all the way in
goes down into the pit and is like, and doesn't try to silver lining anything. Like, at least you have your health. It doesn't do any of that.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of stuff in the video that's actually like reasonable. Yeah. Don't say stupid stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was used as like, don't be sympathetic, be empathetic.
Yeah.
And it was kind of it was a world thing, but it was coming into the church.
Right.
And that was one of the things that like set me on the path originally. So I do track it. And what's funny is we had this big conversation from like 2018 to like 2021.
Yep.
Big empathy wars. And then it kind of died down.
Right.
Sabotage put it back on the radar a little bit in terms of our kind of circles.
Yeah.
But I was sitting, so then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're going to come out with this Sin of Empathy book again. And I'm like, I think we're already over this, aren't we? And then like the last 2 weeks, it's been like, oh no, we are not.
Right.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to really resate. And other people have kind of picked up the torch and run with it. Allie Beth wrote a book.
Right.
Yep. She did. Yep.
On the subject.
Mhm.
That's really good. She just takes it and applies it to a number of different hot button political stuff. And I've looked at that book, and she does a really good job. And so like it is kind of like spilling over. And so you're seeing more people have this kind of conversation, and I'm just like, yeah, let's do it.
We on the show, we talked about this yesterday. And we were going through a lot of the illegal immigration stuff, which is again this sort of empathy, heartstrings. Don't care about justice, don't care about legalities, just feel bad, and have outrage. And then the other example that we looked at where the word is used explicitly was the ladies on The View.
Lady Bishop
Had the Lady
Yep.
Bishop on
Yep.
from the National Cathedral thing. And they're asking her about her stance on illegals and how, her tradition, Episcopalian, whatever is fine with their house of worship being the sanctuary place, to keep them safe. And she gets all, the crowd cheers. And then the lady,
The View host
comes on and she says, "Thank you for your empathy."
For showing us what true empathy is. Or something like that.
Thank you
Something
for
like
showing us what true empathy is.
Yes.
In the middle of all these cheers. So they're like right there.
Yeah. Well, and a week or so ago, somebody, I don't know, some random guy on Twitter, but like blew up because he was like, wokeness just means empathy. When people talk about the woke mind buyers, they just mean empathy. And I just quote tweeted and was like, Chad meme, yes. Like that's actually true.
Right.
Like it's like me and him, like he's in
Right.
favor.
And he's for it.
He's for it. I'm against it. But like we are both agreed that like that is actually true.
Yeah. Wow.
Do you think the Trump administration, in some sense, recognizes this play? I mean, that knows what's going on.
It's very clear that they've learned the lesson that Republicans had never learned to this point, which is if you start trying to argue about who's the most compassionate,
right?
Like if you get into an argument about it, you're already losing.
You're going to lose.
It's going to get framed the wrong way. Now, what's interesting is that they actually are compassionate. If you listen to the border guy, Horman, talk about this issue, he does actually get emotional about all of the horrible consequences,
right.
Laken Riley's family, that kind of stuff,
right?
The communities that are devastated by being overwhelmed, all this kind of thing. So he actually is motivated by compassion, but he's like, and because he's like, but my responsibility is, set the perimeter,
right?
But like draw the
line. I'm going to do my duty.
I'm going to do my job, and you're going to get out,
right?
And he doesn't get short circuited by that. Hegseth, he's a CREC guy, so we were able to get him a copy.
Yeah.
So I assume you read it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
he's pretty busy right now.
He's got a thing or two, but it's on his nightstand probably. I don't know. But I think that Vance the other day, whenever ladies coming after him,
Margaret,
and he's
I don't really care, Margaret.
Don't care, Margaret.
Margaret,
so good
is a great example of like
my emotions aren't steering me.
Exactly. What he felt was you're trying to put a steering wheel on my back. He's like, and I'm just going to shrug it off.
Right.
Like,
I really don't care.
Right.
So one question, and then I want to get into some clips I want to bring up here. I never really thought about the sin of empathy. Until really you wrote on it.
Who would?
I did think about like, emotional manipulation. That's probably what
emotional blackmail,
emotional
manipulation.
So I didn't put it in the category of empathy, but also, and I knew, emotional manipulation, I've kind of been aware of it, and I know it's a problem probably, I don't know, 10 years or something. Not when I was in college,
Right.
But if you'd ask me, or probably ask the common churchgoer, what do you think the big sins in the church are? Lust, anger,
power,
whatever.
Pride.
Why do you think why have you spent so much time on empathy? And it seems to me, especially after listening to you talk about it, reading your book stuff, that it's a way bigger problem.
Correct.
Than, let's say, anger in the church or whatever.
So this is where, I mentioned Friedman's one place, but like actually, as I got into it, I realized like, all of this is in C.S. Lewis, like most things.
Right.
But like Lewis,
it's all in Gerard.
It's all in Gerard, and it's all in Lewis. Like the idea, like he doesn't use the word empathy because it's a recent word. It wasn't the cool word, but he does in a number of places talk about the way that pity and mercy get hijacked.
Pity and mercy,
and so that his language is the passion of pity. There's a chapter in the book, just walking through Lewis and Chesterton. Right, Chesterton has that great quote about how in the modern world the virtues have been separated each other and gone mad.
Yes.
And one of the examples is scientists talk about truth, but their truth is pitiless.
Yeah.
Okay. And you go, COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, no, you can't go see grandma because
we're saving her.
We're saving her.
Right.
And it's pitiless. On the other hand, the humanitarian wants to talk about pity, but his pity is untruthful.
Yes.
It's willing to lie. So he talks about so Chesterton in the 1920s talked about untruthful pity.
Yeah.
I'm here 100 years later talking about untethered empathy.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Right.
Okay.
Lewis uses passion of pity, Great Divorce. All of the damned spirits in Great Divorce are trying to find the steering wheel on the back of those solid spirits.
Yeah.
They're like, how do we manipulate? Because that's what they did on Earth.
Well, and that's the screw tape letters.
It's screw tape.
Constant manipulation.
Constant manipulation. But like, so the tragedian at the very end, who's married to the woman, Sarah Smith, And he's constantly like trying to like make her feel bad. I'm down in hell. Don't you feel bad for me?
Yeah.
And she says, stop it. Stop using pity the wrong way around. Pity is supposed to be a spur to help joy. It's a spur to joy to help misery. Like pity is supposed to be this like little thing that like, hey, you're in a good place. Go help the person who's not. Like, Let's moved with compassion, right?
Yeah.
He says, but you're using it the wrong way around. You're using it as a kind of emotional blackmail.
Trying to drag me down.
You're using it as a kind of blackmail
Yeah.
to get your way. And she says, you did this as a kid. You would be mean to your sisters, and then you would go sulk in the attic, and knowing that eventually they would come up and say, I can't stand
And
the thought of
apologize
him,
to you or
and
something.
they would apologize to you.
Yes.
Right.
And so you've been doing this your whole life. You've been the sulks, all that kind of thing, pity parties.
Yes.
These have worked, and they're universal. It's not a modern problem. This is an old problem.
It seems
Lewis
like
has it.
The just twisting you're walking through with pity seems like that twisting can also happen with things like shame.
Yeah, right.
Or shame can be a good thing, or it can be twisted.
And this was kind of a penny drop moment for me in the middle of the empathy wars, because people were getting real bent out of shape because I called it sin of empathy, and they're like, you can't do that. And I'm like, why aren't people getting this? I'm not saying every form of compassion is bad. I like compassion. I think it's a biblical obligation, and you should cultivate it. And then one of my students, actually, I was online, and when I was in the middle of arguing with somebody, he just jumped in and he was like, nobody, if we just talked about like the sin of anger, everybody knows what we're talking about.
Right.
Even though they know there's a righteous and an unrighteous version, the phrase sin of anger doesn't trigger people.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like, and that's where the passions thing
That's
connected.
helpful. Yeah.
Because it was like, if I said the sin of fear, everybody knows there's a holy fear.
Right.
And there's an unholy fear.
Right.
The Bible talks about there's a godly grief and an ungodly grief.
Right.
So that's another passion.
The sin of grief.
The sin of grief.
Yeah.
The sin of desire. If I say desire, and it's like everybody goes, oh yeah, desire, that can be sinful. But it's not always sinful.
Right.
I desire to depart and be with Christ. That's good.
Yeah.
And so it's always like there's good and bad forms. And what was interesting, this is to your question, why did I camp on it? Because it's the one, if you start walking through that list of passions, everybody has a category for good and bad versions of almost all of them.
Except for that.
You get to pity, and nobody has a category for a bad version of it.
Yeah.
It's an unassailable virtue. It's only good. And this is a Lewis thing. He says, look, it is a really, if something's really great good, the greater the love, the greater the glory of the love, the more destructive it is when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
It becomes a demon, and it devours everything. So in four loves, it's, mother love, or love of friendship, or sexual desire, like all of these, sexual love, all of those things, when they go wrong, they can go really wrong because they're such great things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what is pity? What is empathy other than like love for the hurting?
Right.
It's a great and glorious thing. It's like why we got saved, because Christ had pity on us, right? And so if it goes wrong, it's going to go really wrong.
Yeah.
And the devil loves to hide gnarly sins in tight innocuous things. So then here's
tied into virtue.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm
or,
gonna give you another quote.
A twisted virtue.
Give you a quote. I found this one late in the game.
Yeah.
This is Lewis. Mercy detached from justice grows unmerciful.
Yeah.
That's the important paradox. There are plants which will flourish only in mountain soil, so it appears that mercy will flower only when it grows in the crannies of the rock of justice.
Oh, so
transplanted to the marshlands of mere humanitarianism, it becomes a man-eating weed.
Yeah.
All the more dangerous because it is still called by the same name as the mountain variety.
Right.
Mhm.
So it's like,
Right.
oh, it's mercy. And so you think about,
Right.
this is Lady Pastor,
Yeah.
To Trump, what she keeps saying to him, be merciful.
Yeah. Be merciful.
Be merciful. And and you go
Have
like,
mercy.
and all these liberals or all these woke Christians on Twitter are like, how could we object to this? This is Jesus said, be merciful.
Yeah,
it's like, but what she means by it is make sure the kids can still get castrated.
Yeah, right.
Like
Right.
that's a man-eating
Right,
weed.
right.
It's a destructive weed. It goes
And
by
abortion
the name
and-
mercy. It
Right.
goes by the name
Yeah.
mercy.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is a destructive man-eating weed. And so based on that, I would talk about the sin of mercy.
Yeah. This is
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
And we were, as we were touching on this yesterday, I was just, we were pointing out that and that quote is perfect.
Yeah.
But I was just
I
noting,
want that quote.
I was just noting though, that you have to buy his book.
You got
I want that quote.
It's in there.
Is that as soon as empathy and compassion are divorced from justice, I said that. I just said what you're doing is you're making your passions and your feelings the standard, which will necessarily be destructive.
Right.
Because now it's based on my whims. And we saw this. I mean, we saw this with immigration. We've seen this with like the COVID thing was the same sort of thing. It was like in the name of compassion, like Tim Stevens was arrested torn away from his family because he was
Canada,
he was
yeah.
preaching in Canada and wouldn't close his church down. It's like in the name of saving grandma. But it's like now it's the standards, or even just think about the elites who were like, you can't gather, but of course they were having their parties.
Yeah.
They were gathering in their places wherever they thought it was necessary and helpful to meet. It was like rules for thee, not for me.
Yeah.
It quickly becomes just random and capricious and
cruel.
And then cruel.
So because here's another Lewis. Even a good emotion, pity, if not controlled by charity and justice, leads through anger to cruelty.
Yeah. Wow. Right.
And that because what it does, it's a searchlight. And so you find who's the object of pity.
Yep.
Who's the victim. And then that means that you feel pity for them. And necessarily there's another emotion.
Outrage.
Anger and outrage towards anybody opposed to them or oppressing them.
Yeah.
And so this is why this is why when you actually run into the empathetic mob, they are the most I had people I've had people email me like, I am looking forward to dancing on your grave.
Right.
And you're like, in the name of empathy.
In the name of empathy,
Like,
well, BLM,
we're
same kind
waving
of concept.
this
Yeah.
banner, and it's like, I hope you die. I hope your family gets raped.
Yeah.
You're like, in the name of empathy.
Right. Because you're not empathetic.
Because I'm not empathetic.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But what about empathy for Joe?
Nobody, you know what's funny? In all of the empathy wars, nobody ever asked about my feelings.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's weird.
Just because you don't have any, Joe.
You're cold.
Maybe I did get enough hugs.
Daddy issues. So I actually want to take this conversation and just import it into some clips I want to show and kind of our modern political.
Yeah, here's our moment.
Yeah, here's our moment.
What's
right?
going on today?
First, I want to start, although it applies to this, we need to talk about this. So Trump, his first law, not executive order, that he actually signed was the Lakeland Riley Act.
Yeah.
And that was, she was 20 years old, 19 years old, illegal immigrant, raped her, killed her.
Yeah. And
everything. Here's so Trump, I'm not going to bring up Trump. Actually, I want to bring up the mom. Here's the mom talking about the act that he just signed.
Okay.
Go ahead and roll that clip.
We also want to thank President Trump for the promises he made to us. He said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken. And he hasn't. He's a man of his word. We trust that he will fight for the American people. Most importantly, I want to thank our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because without his sacrifices, Laken's story would have ended on that horrific day that she was taken from us. But because of him, we can continue living knowing that we will see Laken again.
So the act was basically, if illegal immigrants were caught doing these things, automatic.
There's no,
they're out of here. Murder, rape, stealing, even some smaller crimes and stuff. That was the act. I think something like, both in Senate and in the House, something like a total of 55 Democrats or 60 Democrats did not vote for that act.
Right. Yeah. But a bunch of them, this is the thing, is that their weather vanes are good for something. And they realize which way the wind's blowing, and they don't want to, in 2026, they don't want to be on the wrong end of that one. Right. And so you see the political opportunism, because somebody was willing to go no, we're just going to do it.
Right.
We're just going to say enough.
Right.
And that's a good example of that family has been through the ringer. And I've seen guys,
brutal.
There's all sorts of evangelicals who typically comment on the news of the day,
whatever
never said a word about that. But
Christianity Today hadn't written one article on it.
But will put themselves forward as
the empathetic ones,
as the empathetic,
right?
And the respectable, right? So because the respectability is because they have empathy for the right groups,
right?
And yet, but if you're not a part of that group, then empathy is it's either indifference, or
159
or it passes
Democrats
over to cruelty,
right?
159 Democrats didn't vote for it, and that Marvin Olasky is now the executive director of Christianity Today.
Yeah.
And Megan Basham somehow got access to an email he sent out because she gets receipts, and he went before Trump's ratification of his presidency on the 20th. He had sent out an email to his people, asking for stories of children of illegal immigrants getting kicked out of the country. Like, where's all these empathy stories?
Right. They're fishing.
Never brought up
Yeah.
stuff like
Lake and
Lake and
Riley.
Riley.
Right.
Yeah. And here,
Incredible.
But this, again, back to the point is like, but that is what we just witnessed there with her mom speaking, and the fact that you immediately, your heart goes out to her, your heart goes out to her family, and like, that's actually a godly empathy.
It is.
And Trump signing that law, and the lawmakers that put that law in place, they're showing godly empathy. It's truth married to mercy.
Right.
It's justice married to pity.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can, and there would be ways, I could imagine ways in which that could be used as a tool of manipulation.
Sure.
It's not being, because it's actually because what you do, because it's the same thing. Abortion's a good example where empathy for the woman in a difficult circumstance, maybe, you know, the ones that get trotted out. One of the examples I use in the book is there was an political ad in like the governor's race in Tennessee or Kentucky, place like that. And it was a girl, a high school aged girl, talking about how I was raped by my stepdad.
Yeah.
And if so-and-so, if the candidate she was against had his way, I would not have been able to have choice.
Yeah.
And it's all euphemisms and everything else. But it's like, it just pulls your heartstrings. You're like, this girl had this most horrific thing happen to her. And so heart goes out, empathy gets going, compassion. And then it's like, but what gets lost? The unborn child. Right. Like there's no empathy for the unborn child. The child who was executed because of her, you know, of this evil man.
This disaster.
This
horrible thing.
The child got executed, and there's no empathy because all of the empathy got swallowed up by her. And so that's a good example of like, it's untethered. It's not governed by what's true, good, and right.
And then becomes cruel.
It becomes cruel.
It becomes cruel. It becomes destructive. It becomes violent. And again, all in the name of protecting the victim in this situation. But you're creating more victims. You're actually you're creating more destruction. But it has this sort of self-righteous veneer because I'm protecting a victim.
Correct.
No, you're destroying a bunch of other people's lives in the process. It's not actually doing good.
And think about this, Mom. She could have a lot of power if she's using this in an empathetic, cruel way.
If
she's weaponizing
she wanted to weaponize her pain, she could.
But she's credits Christ, which is, I mean, talk about a hard thing to credit Christ for. My daughter's dead. And then she says, but, you know, because of Jesus, I'm going to see her again someday.
Right.
And so she grounds it in that justice of Christ. But I mean, she could, you know, weaponize this in a real way.
Right.
And then Trump, you see Trump just kind of touch her on the back, just kind of in a very, you know, this kind way and everything. So I want to bring up, go ahead.
Just pause on that. Like, again, like, I mean,
the contrast.
But like also, but just like Trump is like accused of being this like hard-hearted person, like this, like, and not
he's mean to illegals.
I'm not defending everything he's ever done, but like at the same time, like he is actually modeling true empathy in this moment. He's actually having compassion on someone who really did have a horrible thing happen.
He's bringing justice.
And he's bringing justice to the situation and seeking to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
That's right. Yeah. So I want to move on to right now today's RFK's they're grilling him like crazy right now.
Senate hearing.
Yeah, Senate hearing. And here is Bernie Sanders bringing up healthcare and talking about healthcare with RFK because RFK is going to be the head of SSH, Secretary of Health and Services. And here's Bernie Sanders talking about healthcare.
Do you agree with me that the United States should join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Yes? No?
Senator, I can't give you a yes or no answer to that question.
Health care a human right? Is health care a human right?
In the way that free speech is a human right,
yeah.
I would say it's different because if with free speech doesn't cost anybody anything, but in healthcare, if you smoke cigarettes for 20 years and you get cancer, you are now taking from the pool. Well, and so are you guaranteed the same right, or is there also a duty?
I'm sorry, I'd love to talk for an hour with you. We got a few minutes left here.
He's like, I don't actually have a logical conversation with you. But think of how many policies that Republicans and Democrats have pushed on us because, I mean, behind all that's empathy. Behind all that is like, we need to take care of everybody.
RFK actually says something there.
Very logical and
more intelligent than I've heard a lot of Republicans.
Yeah.
where he said there's a difference between free speech and the right to medical care, because free speech does not cost anyone anything, but healthcare does.
Right. It's positive versus negative rights.
Yes.
If you sat down with RFK, be like, okay, so like here's the difference between a negative right, one that you have to respect. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just give people, there's that, and you're saying positive right, you have a duty to provide something at your own expense to someone that they're entitled to, and if you don't give it, you're wronging them, regardless of what they do, regardless of how they put themselves in that situation. And this is the other thing about empathy is empathy absolves people of responsibility, right? So it's like if
this happened to you, so therefore
this happened, and so the kind of the apotheosis of that was when the spokesman for Hamas after the October 7th thing said we are the victims, so everything we do is justified, and it's like that lot, like he like and you go like, why is he doing that? And it's like, well, that's the logic, that's the operating system of the West for the last however many years, is like, be the biggest victim and you get all the power.
So I've been thinking about this the whole conversation, and I didn't know when to ask it, but I'm just gonna ask it now. Is how much of all this is directly a heresy, like a Christian heresy, a Christological heresy?
Yes,
because the two things that I was thinking about earlier was like, so Christ sympathizes with us in our weakness. He embodies godly empathy. He is God's empathy for us in a righteous way. So how much of the desire to be seen as the empathetic one is trying to be seen as some kind of high priest? Because that's his priestly ministry to us. He can sympathize with us in our weakness, and at the same time, of course, he's doing this in a way that doesn't just like explain away all our sin. Like he's paid for it.
Right.
So you've got justice and mercy kissing. But then secondarily, the point that you just made about we're victims, we can do anything we want. Jesus is the true and perfect victim, and so actually he is Lord. Because he is the perfect victim, he can do whatever. Like he's been raised from the dead. He has the name above every name, and he actually can command our allegiance in everything. Of course, he does it righteously, unlike the Hamas, But I mean, how is there more to it than that? Have you thought about that? But like, how much of this is like Christological heresy after Christological heresy?
Like anti-gospel.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's it's definitely tied into the compassion of Christ working its way into the West and then jumping the sharks. This is the Chestertonian. These virtues, Christian virtues, have just separated and been isolated from each other. And so the concern for the poor, which is not something that, say, the ancient pagan world had much of a concern for the weak, the vulnerable, the disabled.
They just were left out.
Yeah, like leave them out to be exposed because that's just the cost of doing business. Christianity ended that in the name of compassion, following the compassionate Christ. So that works its way into Western civilization over a couple thousand years. And then it jumps the rails when it becomes untethered from truth and justice and all of the hard stuff. So with Christ, what's interesting, this is one of those things that I didn't realize. When I did the sin of empathy, people threw back at me. But Jesus is an empathetic high priest.
And
I'm like, what? and what happened? The NIV translates the word that all the other translations translate as sympathy, as empathy.
Oh, they did.
So people were actually like, they just opened up their Bibles and they were like, right here it said empathy. Empathy's in the Bible.
Wow.
And what's funny is you go look and see what the Greek word underneath that word is, and it's the word sympathizo. Like it's actually sympathy. But the translators finally went, you know what? Sympathy's not good enough anymore.
It's not strong enough.
It's not a strong enough.
Wow. They'd been influenced by that.
Exactly. Exactly. And so they migrated the term, but now it's in people's Bibles. And it's funny whenever sometimes I'll do sin of empathy just generically, but then if I'm being precise, it's untethered empathy. Right? You guys talked about this the other day.
Yes.
It's interesting that people now, when they come after me and I say untethered empathy, they're like, "That's what Jesus had. He had untethered empathy for us. Jesus's empathy was radically untethered." And so they're just going to double down.
That's a Christological heresy.
It is because the point of the text is. He's a sympathetic high priest who was tempted in every way as we are, yet without sin. It's the without sin. What do you call that? That's the tethering. He's tethered to righteousness. He's not his pity. He's not going to blaspheme.
Yeah.
He's not going to blaspheme
Right.
God. He's not going to lie.
Right.
He's not going to do anything evil in the name of empathy, because he's going to be sympathetic.
Right.
But there's a line at which he says, I can't go there.
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about this yesterday with just in the garden. If you think about Adam there next to his wife, he's whatever he was doing while she's tempted, she sins, she hands him the fruit, and whatever went through his head in that split second, it seems a decent speculation that he despaired, he gave in. My wife is going to die. I might as well die with her. Something like this. But there you have feelings driving, passion driving, rather than the obedient response, which had been, no, honey, and taking her by the hand, leading her straight to God, and then saying, God, my wife has sinned. We have sinned. But instead of her dying, let me die in her place, which is what Christ does. We know that's what Adam should have done, because Christ is the new Adam.
He's the one that
it's
did
what
it.
Christ did. Christ comes, he's innocent, wholly innocent, and says, take my life instead of my bride, the church's life. Let me die instead of her. And so but that's the fact that he dies tells you it's tethered.
Right.
Because,
Well, and Adam did the opposite, because he says, the woman you gave me,
right.
which is
He throws her under the bus.
Kill her, not me.
Kill her instead of me. Right.
Kill her, not me.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The NIV was published in 1978.
I think it's more recent. Like they do updates.
They do updates.
Because I don't think it was
Okay.
the original 1978 one that had it. It's been
Interesting.
so I went and looked whenever somebody pointed this out.
Yeah.
And I think it's like the 2011 version.
Wow.
And what it is and this is where Lewis just gets this stuff. So you remember there's that section, I think it's in Screwtape, where he talks about the difference between charity and unselfishness. And if you ask a lot of people it's weight of glory, what the best virtue is, and they're going to say unselfishness.
Right.
And older generations would have said charity. And
right.
he says this isn't just a philological point. It's not just about the language.
Right.
It's like a negative virtue, don't be selfish, has replaced a positive one.
Yeah.
Do good to others.
Right.
And he says that's a big deal.
Right.
So he recognizes the linguistic shift actually matters.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing here.
Yes.
Like the move from sympathy to empathy is actually it's taking us in a destructive way by trying to be more holy than God.
Right.
We're going to okay, Jesus' compassion would go that far. I'm going to go farther.
Right.
Yeah.
All the way in.
All the way
down.
I'm gonna do one more video and then we'll get into beer and psalm. So this is Elizabeth Warren just kind of becoming unhinged on RFK.
Okay.
You financially down the line.
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You have said
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
No, look, no one should be fooled here. As Secretary of HHS, Robert Kennedy will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country. And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Senator, I support vaccines.
We can stop there.
I will I support
kids might die, but he's going to cash in. So she's obviously saying that he's going to shut down the vaccine industry.
Yeah.
Even though I think she's made a lot of money off the vaccine
right,
industry.
Yeah. Well, and the whole thing was he, I think later he says, I haven't taken any money. I'm not, and I won't take any money.
Yeah.
So that's not what this is about.
Yeah.
Like only people taking money in this room are
all right.
all you people up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And things like that. So it's but the interesting thing about this too is like it does introduce another dynamic of this is feminism.
Yep.
Because so people have talked about, Elon said the woke mind virus is dead. It's been deleted. There's the vibe shift.
Yeah.
Trump's administration is not taking the bait, not getting manipulated this way.
Right.
And so people can start to think like, oh, it's over now.
It's over now.
And it's like, as long as you have feminism, wokeness will be with you.
Right.
Because women are the more empathetic sex.
Right.
And so when it comes to passing laws, drawing lines, guarding boundaries, whether guarding the doctrine and worship of the church,
right,
or whether guarding the borders of a nation,
borders of our nation,
right, and doing the hard things, it's like the empathetic sex is ill-suited to that role.
Right.
Their empathy is a great and glorious gift.
Right.
So
We
this
talked
is-
about that yesterday a
so
little
it's
bit
like
too.
this is a
Yeah.
gift from God. That's why they're great for, like, women are fantastic first responders to people in pain, and they'll lean in with welcome and comfort and care and nurture and all of those things. What a gift. But if you sit and say, and we need you to be the guardian,
Right.
they won't guard. They're not built for it.
Right. Yeah.
And instead you get the longhouse stuff. And with all of these different clips of the female use of pressure,
right,
and the agitation
and
outrage that activates male agitation.
Right.
Men don't like they don't know what most men have a real hard time with women who are agitated.
Right.
And so that's one of the things more people are noticing is then all of these congressional hearings, whether it's Hegseth or him, they're getting yelled at by henpecked by angry, mainly white women.
Yeah.
White liberal women are angrily
She's
yelling,
on your shoulder.
and you can just see them just kind of going like, I just have to endure this.
Yes.
Okay, this is the price of it, but I'm going to get through and I'm going to do the job.
Right.
This is the first test.
Right.
And that's actually right. And so this is why I don't think wokeness is done, because until feminism is uprooted, you will continue to have empathy in all of the rooms that are making the decisions, even the Republican room. So, so if you said, well, what would it take for you to think that wokeness was over? I was like, it's not just ending DEI. Great, praise God, go for it.
Right.
It's when Republicans stop bragging about how many women they got elected to office.
Right. Yep.
It's when Nancy Mace, who broke the glass ceiling at the Citadel, first graduate of the Citadel, female graduate of Citadel. It's when she's not the champion,
right?
Because on the one hand, she's no men, deranged men in female spaces. And it's like, great, we agree with you on that.
Right.
But you invaded a male space.
Yeah. What about deranged females?
A historic male space of the military.
Right.
You said you have to let me in there, and used empathy in order to get it. It's not fair.
Right.
It's not right.
That's right.
In order to do it. And now, and then she still has all of the compassion for sodomites.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And so, she's proudly supporting gay marriage. She wants to draw the line. And it's like, that's not how this works. Like the logic will work its way out.
Right.
And so whenever that kind of gets rolled back, and you have the Republicans this is a long game, right? It's a long view. But when it's no longer seen as a great plus that we half of our caucus is women, and it's like they could be great women. I might vote for some of them in different elections.
Yeah.
But it's like it doesn't matter. The empathetic sect is ill-suited to those kinds of roles. That's why it's judgment from God when children and women rule.
Yeah.
When we talked about this yesterday, I'd love to get your take on this. We pulled out, there was a clip during Hegseth's nomination hearing in which I noted that he said, I wish we had the clip, but he said that thinking that unity was our strength in the military was one of the dumbest things we ever said, or something like that.
Yeah.
And said, unity is not our strength. Our strength and our ability to fulfill a mission and protect our country, that is our strength.
Right.
Our actual military ferocity, that is our strength. And when we're strong like that, we get unity.
Right, but you can't aim at unity.
And the thing that I pointed out was, I don't know how much Hegseth is thinking through these things, but I thought to myself, of course, this is all in the context of him getting henpecked about some of his comments related to women in the military. And he kind of hedged a little bit of what he said. And, you can't blame him in certain respects. Yeah. But I mentioned here, him making that point is him making the point that the military must be masculine.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
So along with
readiness,
it's not about inclusion.
Yeah. No, that's right.
About good vibes,
but
feelings.
the feminine instinct of empathy is tied really closely to their concern about unity,
consensus.
And so it's like, and again, in a family, you need that, but you don't want that leading the family. In a church, you need that. In a nation, you need that, but you don't want that leading.
Right.
You need somebody. You need the masculine edge at the tip of the spear, saying, "No, we have a mission.
Right.
We have to obey Jesus. We have to do what is right. We need to make disciples of all the nations. We need to establish justice in the land. We've got to honor God as a family." So obedience is the key that men follow. That's our duty, and it's glorified and helped by a concern for unity and empathy. But if you flip it around and you make unity the goal, we saw a clip yesterday of this pastor guy in a church talking about the illegal immigration problem that, they might be coming into the church and interrupting our church services. And I just want us to be unified. I just want us to be unified. And then he said something about, some lady in the church is going to lead us in prayer in a minute. And I was like, even before he said some lady is going to lead him in prayer, I could have already told you that church has been inundated with feminism.
That's right.
Whether they know it or not, because the primary concern is unity rather than the concern being obedience. And then when you obey Jesus, you get the right kind of unity.
Right. So if woman's the glory of man, this is a parallel. It's not like one, but it's like woman's the glory of man. Okay. Unity is the glory of a common mission.
Right.
But it's the common mission that comes first. If you're aiming, so I was actually talking with some pastors the other day, and it was the racial harmony conversation came up, and so they asked me, like, what do you think it went wrong? And I said, I think it was that even though everybody said on the surface, this is all about the gospel, that desire for ethnic harmony actually became the thing we were aiming at.
Right.
As opposed to it became the thing that happened because we were all aiming at the same thing.
We want to disciple the nations.
Right.
And as you do that, you get the nations coming in.
Yeah. And so it's, again, this Lewis thing, first things first, you get second things thrown in. So you put the mission first, you get unity thrown in.
Right.
Yeah.
You put unity first, you lose both.
Yeah, the mission
first
and
second
unity.
things.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's
you
right.
lose the mission
So good.
and you lose the unity.
Right. So back to the image that he uses, when you plant that plant of pity or mercy on the great crag of justice and truth, then you get them. It's glorious. That compassion, that pity, that mercy is glorious. And same thing with unity.
Yeah.
Unity is a fruit of pursuing justice and truth. But when you allow that to be divorced and you plant it down in the bog of whatever, empathy,
It's a man-eating weed.
it's exactly. It's destructive and it destroys. Again, all in the name of unity. We have to be unified. We need to, and again, think of COVID examples. Love your neighbor, mask up, and don't let anyone see grandma.
Yeah.
It's just
and the result was all kinds of divisions in churches.
Right.
All because
in the name of
like love and unity and everything else, all of a sudden it's like we're fractured.
Do you have a scotch for us?
I do. And
You know
also,
what?
I also have a song.
Oh, whoa, that's kind of loud,
Whoa.
bro. Actually, real quick,
Yeah.
I'm going to show you something I got in the mail today.
Oh, fun.
This is just, what might have been.
Yeah.
What might have been. Toby and Gabe, enclosed, please find your inauguration ceremony tickets. These are the commemorative ones. We collected these for you guys. Look forward to seeing you. Sorry it didn't work out as planned. If you ever need a place to stay in D.C., our home is open to you. All the best and God bless. So
that's awesome.
This is your commemorative inauguration ticket.
I like that it says Amy Klobuchar on there.
Yeah.
Because
frame it.
Our friend in Minnesota is connected, and Amy Klobuchar gave us tickets to attend the inauguration.
She was like the chair of the inauguration committee. Or whatever.
Oh, she was. Okay.
The Psalm of the day is Psalm. Whoa! I didn't get any scotch yet.
Oh, this
is Scotch and Psalms.
This is today.
Scotch and Psalms. The Psalm of the day is Psalm 122, and this is a version of Psalm 122 that we love singing around here. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is builded as a city that is compact together, whither the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. For there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. Peace be within thy walls and prosperity within thy palaces. For my brethren and companions' sakes, I will now say, peace be within thee. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek thy good. I just love the fact that I wrote this and I had no idea what we're talking about today. And this actually all fits together really well. God knew. This is a psalm of thanksgiving for the gift of worship. It's one of the Psalms of Ascent, psalms that were sung by pilgrims on their way up to the great feasts in Jerusalem at the temple. And they may have been sung regularly at the beginning of the synagogue services on the Sabbath days. In fact, many of the traditional Christian liturgies at the beginning of the service, the minister actually says the first couple of lines. He says, I was glad when they said to me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And the congregation responds, our feet are standing within your gates, O Jerusalem.
Ooh, are we going to add that? So at some point they're open. I like that.
It's interesting.
It's a traditional, it's one of the traditional liturgical responses. The psalm celebrates, of course, the unity of the city of Jerusalem as a picture of the unity of the tribes of Israel in worship. But it's not a sentimental or what we might call empathetic unity. It is the unity of obedience to the law of God, unity in the judgments of the thrones of the house of David. That's where the unity is found. The psalm prays for the peace of Jerusalem and the prosperity of all that love her. Peace be within those walls because of the house of the Lord. Now, it's important to point out at the outset here that this psalm is no longer talking in the first instance about the current city of Jerusalem in the Middle East. What sanctified that city at one time in particular was the house of the Lord, the temple, and the fact that God dwelt there in a unique way. That temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, and then while another temple was built, that one was destroyed in the first century in 70 AD. And Jesus, remember, had specifically predicted that destruction. He had promised that when that temple was destroyed, another would have already been built. In fact, during his life, he had promised to build a new temple in 3 days, which he did in his own body. That's in John 2:19 through 21. In other words, all those who trusted in the Messiah Jesus have become the new Israel, the new Jerusalem, the new house of the Lord. And therefore, that city of God is the one we bless and celebrate when we're singing and praying Psalm 122. We celebrate the peace and justice and unity of the Christian church, the bride of Christ. And we love her and we seek her peace because of the house of the Lord. Now, as it happens, we gather as families and cities and nations, and there are Christians in the modern city of Jerusalem. And so they are certainly included. And therefore, so is their city. But by that same token, this new Jerusalem includes all the cities and nations with Christians in them, bringing the glories of their nations into it. At the same time, this does not obliterate these nationalities any more than the church obliterates differences of sex or marriage or family. Although there have been attempts at that over the centuries, and some try to justify women preachers and gay mirage under the guise of their being neither Jew nor Greek, nor male nor female in Christ Jesus. But that's talking about our salvation, our heavenly inheritance. It's not talking about our sexual assignments or our earthly duties. And those include our duties as men and women, our duties as husbands and wives, and our duties as neighbors and citizens of our particular cities and nations. In Philippians, Paul says that they're to live as citizens in a way that becomes the gospel of Christ. That's in Philippians 1:27. And later, Paul says that this citizenship has its origin actually in heaven, from whence we await the return of the King. In other words, the work of the Holy Spirit is not only turning us into true men and true women, true husbands and true wives, but also true citizens, true Americans, true Mexicans, true Aussies, true Russians, and all the rest. So while this psalm certainly celebrates the city of God is made up of families and nations, and the city of God is teaching our families and nations how to establish peace and justice and the right kind of unity in our lands.
That's it.
That was it.
That's it.
Were you sending some emails?
Yeah, I was working on producing Thursday's show.
Okay. Yeah. There we go.
Can't stop.
Joe, thanks for coming on the show.
Man.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm looking forward to your book. When's it coming out?
New one comes out middle to the end of February. They can pre-order now at Canon Press. Go find the canonpress.org/empathy, I think.
Yeah.
Emotional Sabotage still out there. Get those pair and
yeah, that's super.
Get ready for the next 4 years.
I feel like that you were mentioning a chapter in your book that complements Megan's work real well.
Yeah.
I feel like she should put that chapter in her book for her next edition.
That's
too.
right.
Put it all together. That'd be cool.
No, it was
That'd
fun.
be cool.
At ACCS last year, she gave the talk. And so she gave her talk, I gave my talk. So she did the detail work, and then I was like, I'm going to describe how this all worked, and it's a great.
That's really cool.
1-2 punch.
Yeah, 1-2 punch.
I really appreciate your work on this. It's really helpful.
Well, I'm not going to end with the normal closeout. I want to end with Psalm 122. So there you go.
You're just going to let it play.
Yeah, let it play out.
You're not going to tell them to baptize their babies.
We'll see. That's in Psalm 122. I'm sure somewhere.
Great. Great. See you tomorrow.
Yep. Good night.
Legacy media is falling apart, and as it crumbles, a void is opening, a void that we intend to fill. The big legacy news networks currently average just 1.2 million viewers a weeknight, and those numbers are only going to get lower. Legacy media is dying, and the younger generation has moved on. Legacy media panders. Legacy media lies. Legacy media does not know what the truth is, and they don't care about it. Legacy media is a dumpster fire. This is why we few in our wild imaginations have started the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Our goal is to take down the legacy media giant of the last 50 years with our 5 stones. We started in 2016 with our flagship show, Cross Politics. Since those small beginnings, we now air on DirecTV. Our broader podcast network now gets over 4 million downloads a year. And our Fight Laugh Feast pub, which includes TV shows like This America, The Rowdy Christian's Guide, Pastors in Politics, and As the Lord Pleases, with your support, many more to come. Our goal is to become the flagship new media 2.0 network over the next 50 years and take over nightly news, sports, sitcoms, hunting shows, and more, all conveniently stored for you in our Fight Laugh Feast pub. We're already reaching the next generation through our podcast shows on YouTube, X, and our pub, while also tapping into legacy media audiences by airing our shows on TV through DirecTV and Xfinity. We have made a lot of progress with some duct tape and a good bit of intuition and a lot of sweat. And now we need your support more than ever. The TV networks have had such a negative impact on our households, and we're trying, by the grace of God, to put a stop to that. We have the opportunity. We just need the army. Now more than ever, we need you to join our pub to help us reach our goal of 1 million pub supporters in the next 5 years. There's no way around it. Competing with Fox and the Alphabet networks without money is virtually impossible. It's cheap for you to join. And when you do, you're combining your small monthly support with a growing army of like-minded Christians. We have thousands, we need millions. So if you want more of the Alphabet network's misinformation and lies, don't join. But if you want to give us a mere 5 stones, then please join the pub, and together we will take a swing at the head of big media, all the while fighting, laughing, and feasting to the glory of God.